And welcome back to the second part of the DSOMM Level 2 video. Last time we finished with the infrastructure hardening, and now it's time to finish up the circle and finish to start with the level 3 maybe in a following video. So just go into the details as I promised. But as before, please like and subscribe this video before we even started. I really appreciate it, and it means a lot to me. Leave any comments as we go, as you please. That would be great. And grab yourself a coffee. It is a refreshing and energetic thing that we need to keep on writing code, going through that circle, and doing the documentation and working as security champions, if you remember last video. Cool. So, next section, information gathering. That's the next quadrant, and the first item on that list, the first cell, it's actually login. Over here we have two items. Login of security events, and if you use something like external identity provider, for example the Auth0, it is quite a popular one, I would say. You basically need to have the security events logged from there or available from there. Even better if those logs are actually consolidated into the central place somewhere. So if for example, you are using the Azure and you have Auth0 as your identity provider, then it would be great to send logs from the Auth0 to your application sites instance to have all of the logs in a central place. And basically, the next item is about the visualized login. So you logs and you need to be able to query those logs easily, and you should be able to search and consume logs as needed, and pretty much all of the systems, apps, and security events should be in a single place so you can triage the issues as they arise. In terms of what are those security events, under this item there is a list of those that you want to have, and they begin with successful or more interesting failed login attempts. So for each of the users, when they try to log into the system, you need to have a log about this, about the creation and changing and deletion of the users, and so on. The last one is especially interesting, the unicorn types of logs. So based on your system, you need to know what are the security events that you care about and log appropriately. And once again, that all of those logs, it is better if they all in the same central place. But next is monitoring. So what you want to do with those logs and additionally metrics as well. You want to have alerts. So imagine if your CPU is running dry or if your database is running out of space, you definitely want to have an alert in place to say that something bad is happening and your application is not responsive. Or if some of those security events that you had are actually raising red flags, and in that case, it once again would be better to have an alert in place. The next one is something for your pocket to monitor the cost of your system. And if in level 1 we had just budget metrics, now we want to monitor the cost of it. And it's on top of that, would be good to have alerts as well, and you should be able to set a budget for your system and say that if your bill goes above something, that you definitely want to be alerted about this. And the last is visualized metrics. So pretty much as we said about the logs just now before, you need to be able to search those metrics, all of them, all together, and they need to be easily to consumed. Next is testing KPIs, and that whole section is actually all about the documentation, and that is all about fun for the, and I mean fun, for the security champions. The first one is to have a documentation about, and the documentation needs to be quarterly updated, or at least quarterly report about the discovered vulnerabilities and we distinguish how severe they are. And usually that severity is from the low to critical. And as it is over here, said somewhere, let me find it. Um, Actually, it doesn't have. Ah, no, it's over here, at least quarterly. So, yeah, you need to burden your security champion or security champions for each of the teams with an activity like this to have a documentation report provided with a number of vulnerabilities discovered. And then this report needs to be expanded to split it by uh, layer. So this is based on your architecture. And to be honest, for myself, I have no idea why this one is separate from the previous one, because it would make sense to just have a single report for me instead of creating a secondary one. And basically, you would need to just have a same report for each of the layers of your application to have a number of vulnerabilities discovered and what severity of those vulnerabilities. Uh, and the last one over here, yet again, another task for the security champion, most likely, is to calculate the mean time to resolution of the patching via the pull requests. So another strange task for me to calculate something, especially that those need to be done in an automated way, if you remember the previous video already, but still something that is required, and you would need to provide the explanation of what is your process and what are the results of your process for the auditors when those will come asking questions. And the interesting bit, and I forgot to mention that in my previous videos about the DSOMM, is that you have specific links to the ISO 27001, so the security uh, certificate for your application with different points to where it actually maps to the ISO requirement. And when your application will apply for the ISO certification, or if then this DSOM implementation is actually very helpful in that regard, and the auditors will definitely ask those questions. So something to consider, something to work on. Next is the application tests section, and the first one is security unit tests for important components. And basically, I would argue that you could include not only the unit tests, but the integration and the contract tests as well. And if you have, for example, implemented your own way of role-based access control or something like that, then it definitely would go very uh, it would be very beneficial to test it in a integration style rather than as a unit test only. But what title says, you need to have those unit tests from the security perspective as well. Easy to implement and something that is good to have for sure. Next one is the consolidation, and here you have the simple visualization of defects, and it is hard to understand, I would say, how to visualize the defect, but pretty much you need to provide motivation to enhance your security. And the best way to do it is to show that for each of the application, or for each of the layer of your application that you have, to have a list of components, and if they have critical vulnerabilities, God forbid, available in your code base, or if they are on the medium or low level of vulnerabilities that are available from the dependencies. And most likely there will be some vulnerabilities implemented or available or still leaking into your code base. And if you have none, then even better for you. You can just say in that visualization, and that can be as a once again a quarterly report or something like that, that everything is good and you don't have any vulnerabilities available. So your application is as strong as it can be. Now, about the dynamic depths for the applications, and here we have a couple of items as usual. The first one is the coverage of client-side dynamic components, and basically what you need to have is to use some sort of crawler to do the dynamic testing of your application. So not just the application when it is built and from the code perspective, but actually from the user perspective. And what I can recommend is to use something like a code dynamic scan. It is quite good one, and it can be used not so. It is not so expensive. What I wanted to say, but if you don't want to pay, then you could have just a set of end-to-end tests where you would try and include the security tests on top of that and see how the application is handling those. Next is a simple scan, and this one is to have a simple security scan in general. And yeah, if you have a good test coverage or good implementation of tests already, so as I said, from the code, for example, or if you have your good end-to-end tests, then this would be taken from that. And the last from this one is a usage of different roles. So most likely your application is not just for a single role of your application, but you would have at least some sort of admin tests, admin users, I imagine, and regular users on that would be doing every day-to-day activities from your application. And in that case, all of those roles need to have separate tests implemented for their authentication and then what is available for those roles or not in your application. So pretty much to have a good coverage from the dynamic point of view from your application. Next, the same thing for the infrastructure, but same but different. uh, First of all, you need to test for the exposed services, and the best way to do it is basically to know what kind of ports are supposed to be open from your application. And if it is a web app, then most likely you would have port 80 and port 443 open, but the rest of the ports probably are not needed, and you need to do the tests for the exposed ports. And you can write something like a script that will use Nmap, for example, to scan for those ports from your application. And if you will find additional ports being opened on your service, then it is definitely a big red flag that you need to fix and alleviate that issue as soon as possible. Next, to have tests for the network segmentation, and basically you need to uh, verify that the traffic flows as it needs to be. If you remember in this infrastructure hardening we had before, that you need to have a separate network segregation in place, and here you basically need to verify that those networks are actually segregated and separated. And for example, the access to the databases is available only from inside the virtual network where your application is hosted, and the databases should not be accessible from the outside world willy-nilly. Easy. And I would actually highlight that those tests in the description of this, it actually doesn't say that it needs to be done in an automatic way. It's always better to have something automated, but actually, if you have it as a manual test, that actually will do as well. Next is a configuration of your cloud environments, and this is a very interesting one. And I would say that a lot of services, cloud service providers, actually have implementation for this already. And for example, with Azure, there is a Cloud Defender that is available. It's not free, Well, there is a free version, but you can pay for it as well, and it will scan your resources and highlight what needs to be fixed from the security perspective for you. And it's easy to use and something from where you can build a lot of policies to strengthen your environment. And coming back to another topic from the infrastructure hardening, yet again, to have a baseline hardening of the environment implemented. Cool. With that, we finished with the dynamic depths for the infrastructure, and now we can go to the static depths for the application. The first one is a software composition analysis from the server side, and here we need to test for vulnerabilities of the server sides of the applications. And as I said in a previous video, Trivi can help here as well. So Trivi is a great tool to use. But on top of that, actually, there is a service called Sonar. You might have heard about it, and it is actually doing the vulnerability scanner on top of that as well in a uh, static tests, static depths way. So you can use it as well. Next is to test for time for to patch, and it is something new that was added to the DSOMM. Well, recently, uh, and recently it is in quotes, and it probably can be handled by the security in a manual way as well as type of documentation. So basically, you need to test the time to patch based on that mean time to close those automatic PRs. And yeah, it can be applicable for the infrastructure as well, so to everything. And yeah, you need to test how quick you are doing those patches and have activity and report available to just verify and provide information in terms of how fast those patches are applied to your resources, to your services. And I actually have a video already on my channel about the renovate, so please check it out. It can help you to understand what is needed for the patches and this. And the last one is to test the leap year. It is once again something new that was added, and if you would check the video from DSOMM Level 1 that I did, the leap year, I believe it was not there, but it was added quite recently, or semi-recently, and it should be easy to integrate into your build pipeline. There is a leap year uh, package or simple measure how to check the dependency freshness. It's pretty much to have a setting somewhere in your application, in your pipeline, to verify how old is your dependency. And if you want to keep your dependencies fresh, and probably you do, then you need to set some conditions in terms of how old of those dependencies that you allow into your code base. Because if you stick to automated patches of the patch version of your dependencies only, you might miss when they will go up a minor version or even more in a major version, and those automated patches wouldn't be implemented, and probably in a correct way, because with major changes there might be breaking changes that you don't want to be merging into your code base in an automatic way, and therefore it needs to be done in a manual way as a task. So coming back to the requirement from the design, I believe, where you needed to create those stories in your backlog, and when you do those, the good indication that you've done something is that your leap year would go above certain threshold. So it's a great thing to have. Now with the static depths for the infrastructure, finally, and I'm rambling a lot, so sorry, bear with me. More coffee. The first one is all about the Kubernetes, and you need to have tests for your Kubernetes cluster. And usually you would have, once again, infrastructure code scanners that should do that for you. But if you are not using the Kubernetes cluster itself, then you can skip this requirement at all. Easy, right? Next, to test for image lifetime. And remember how in the deployment, I think, no, it wasn't in the deployment, it was in the patch management. When we would define in a documentation, in a requirements, in a process, what would be the maximum lifetime for the image. Over here, for the static depth for the infrastructure, we need to test what is the actual lifetime of the image that is running as a container somewhere in your environment. And if it goes above the defined maximum lifetime, then you need to redeploy the application and rebuild everything and have a notification about this. Next, to test of your virtualized environments, and once again, you need to have a security or the vulnerability scans for your virtual machines, for your uh, Docker images, and well, over here for the definition of your virtualized environment, so for the Docker files, for example, and what you going to do? You can use a 3D VM scan. It's experimental here, but you still can use it, and I definitely would recommend to use it. And you can use what are the images that you use for the different vulnerabilities and security issues that you might have. So that would be my recommendation for this thing to fix up. Uh, Next, to test the cloud configuration. And once again, Tree comes to the rescue. I really hope that you have your cloud configuration provided through your infrastructure as code repository. So, for example, Terraform or Pulumi and so on. And Tree can scan the Terraform code for sure and find all of those different issues in terms of the security or the vulnerability or misconfigurations in your code in an easy way. And you should have that test in your pipeline and do not allow something from branch to be merged into your main branch if there are any securities or vulnerability issues present. Easy. Uh, yeah. And the last that we already touched is to test the definition of the virtualized environments. So Docker files most likely for you, I would guess. And yet again, Trivy comes to the rescue. So Trivy is a great tool, and you definitely need to consider it more. I will create a bigger video about all the ways that you can use it. And the last item is a test intensity. And the only requirement over here is to have regular automated tests. And I said that many times already, and just now I was repeating it, is to have the best way to achieve it is to have those tests, security tests on each push, or at least into each of the pull requests to your main branch. So you would run the tests for the from 3D. So to test the definition of your infrastructure code, to have scans for the vulnerabilities, to run the integration and unit tests from the security point of view, and so on, and even run the regular tests surprisingly as well. And yeah, to run them automatically for each push, and you will be covered over here. So your pipelines should be strong. Cool. I think we finished, and the second part of this DSOMM overview is done. Thank you for staying up. I hope coffee really helped you to digest all of that information. And if you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. See you soon.